Hello there, my name's Gary Sims, and this is Gary Explains. Today I have the great pleasure of being with Sam from Writesonic. He is the CEO and the founder. Sam, nice to see you and be with you today.
Thank you very much, Gary. Very nice to be here. Been following you for a long time on YouTube. Been seeing your videos for a while. So lovely to connect and lovely to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. Do just tell us a little bit about Writesonic, where you got the idea from, how it came into business, how it's doing, what the future is, just so we know, because this is a real commercial product that's actually based on generative AI. So this is a real success story. So tell us a little bit about it.
Absolutely. So Writesonic, we started out as an AI content generation platform, but now we are doing much more than that. So we are sort of a generative AI suite of tools where, one focus is on AI content creation, where a user is able to create any kind of content, whether that is textual content like SEO optimized blog posts, ad copy, emails, product descriptions, all of that. Also, we have text to human like speech generation. We have ChatSonic, which is our ChatGPT like alternative for content creation. And you also have image generation sort of built in. So one is that part, which is basically all-in-one content creation, unified content creation. And second part also that we recently started working on is our product called Botsonic, which is basically a generative AI powered chatbot builders. Because if you use the chatbots of the current, or if I say last generation, those are basically dumb rule-based chatbots where everything needs to be defined in terms of when the user says this, then do this, otherwise do this. So all of that. But if you just add generative AI to that mix, it becomes much more personalized and is able to kind of answer the queries in sort of like a human-like manner. So those are the two key things we have been focusing on. And the idea behind Writesonic came about. So I'm a software engineer by background, doing, a lot, like I used to do a lot of side projects in terms of build SaaS applications or any other kinds of applications. Now, one thing that you need when you need to sort of promote anything online is a landing page, whether you're launching on Product Hunt or Reddit, Twitter, any of those things. So the idea came about that, okay, I don't have any marketing experience. Why don't I train an AI model? So at that time in 2020, GPT-3 just came out, with the private API access and all. So wondered like, why don't I train an AI on the best content from the top brands like Stripe and Apple and all of these ones and get it to do that work for me. So that is what we started with as an AI marketing copy generator. And then since then we have been evolving. We are, about a 40 people team now. We are already profitable. So yeah, and every day it's a new day in AI. So we're just working on that. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. So that's a good story because you started with a particular need, so marketing.
Absolutely.
And now you've grown to what we were saying. It was audio, chat bots, there's a chat GPT kind of thing, article writing, so it's grown and it's all based on this same generative AI base that they've got. Now you're using ChatGPT as your back end and you're doing the front end, is that right?
So we started out with GPT-3 and then of course GPT 3.5 came out, GPT-4, all of that. But the approach we have right now, it's sort of like a model agnostic approach wherein we basically automatically switch between different models depending on the use case or what we are trying to generate. So it's also we also use Google's Palm, we use Anthropic, we also are working on our own private models as well. So it's a combination of those things that works together. Yeah.
All right, interesting. That's good because ChatGPT is the leader, obviously, and they've got a big, head above everybody else. But I'm sure everybody else is catching up very quickly. And tomorrow it might be somebody else's model that's the best one. So you need to keep your business one step away from that, so you can just integrate, which is really interesting. Now, people are obviously prepared to pay for this service. I've got it myself. I've used it for long before this offer for us to chat came up. I've been using it. So so now obviously people are paid to pay for it because I'm just talking from the commercial side of things for a second. There is a future in businesses based on generative AI because some people think that generative AI has got no future in terms of money because everyone wants the free version. It's going to take everyone's jobs away. It's going to ruin the economy. Whereas you're showing you've now got 30 people being employed and people are prepared to pay for this.
Absolutely. So for us, we have been in the generative AI game much before ChatGPT. ChatGPT just came out last year, and ChatGPT is nothing but basically a conversational UI on top of generative models. So I think one thing that worked out very well there is that everyone is familiar with that conversational UI on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, Telegram, all of that. So that is what really resonated with those hundreds of millions of people, where everyone uses WhatsApp, so everyone knows how to just send a message, get back a response. So that made it really, really accessible to so many people. But much before that, we have been in this space since like end of 2020. So and yeah, companies, we are working with lots of companies. Companies are paying for it because they do see the value in terms of the time they save, in terms of the productivity, the value in overall that they get there. So definitely, I think, and if you're seeing right now, almost every tool is adding generative AI because it just makes it so much more productive. So it's going to evolve, and people are going to pay for it if they're getting the value out of it, for sure.
So in this relatively new field, you are a veteran. I mean, three years in this field is like you've been in this forever. So you've got a lot of experience. So let's touch some of the what were some of the problems you had to overcome. So you've got this model, GPT-3, GPT 3.5. You've got ChatGPT. What were some of the problems you had to solve to make this model do what you wanted it to do?
I think so. Definitely, since we started in 2020, things have evolved quite a bit. For example, when we were using GPT-3 itself, at that time there used to be like a much bigger focus on prompt engineering. Right now, it's still relatively straightforward, where you just write something and it gives you back something. But at that time, until ChatGPT came out, it was a lot of you would have to collect a lot of data. So, for example, if I'm generating like a YouTube video script, I would have to collect examples of like, lots of very good YouTube video scripts and then fine tune on top of that to produce a new video script that matches the structure and the writing style and all of that. So I think that in the last 1 year, I would say, has evolved quite a bit, because now for example, with GPT-4, you're able to just give one example and it will create something which is very, very similar to that. So that has evolved quite a bit. Couple of problems there are still that are still there with ChatGPT, let's say, is one is hallucination, where you don't know that any kind of information that is producing, is it actually correct or not. So that is one thing that with ChatSonic, when we launched out, we kind of integrated Google into it like last year itself, so it was able to give references to wherever that information came from. And then second problem also is any kind of content you get with, let's say, ChatGPT kind of a thing, it's very generic. So if there are 100 people who are asking the same question, it will give very similar response and it would have a very similar writing style. So that is another thing where we work with brands to incorporate their own writing style and guidelines so that it follows the same kind of style and tonality around that. So like that, I think these couple of very important problems around factual accuracy and branded content, and secondly, also people want to use, like, companies want to use their own data to produce something new rather than some information that comes out of GPT, which is out of date. So these couple of things are what we have been working on solving for brands and for sort of different companies and individuals. And yeah, it's been an interesting kind of path so far.
So most people nowadays, if they just use, let's say, ChatGPT, it's just their prompt and the reply from ChatGPT. But really, we're seeing that there's a pipeline now, isn't there? And your products are part of a pipeline. So you come in with private data, you might come in with stuff from the web, then you integrate the response from the large language model, and then maybe you tune it on for formatting, let's say, I don't know, I'm just guessing on the output. So there's actually a chain of things that actually happen before you get the final result, rather than just me talking to the model and the model giving back its reply.
Exactly.
And that's really the future, isn't it? That the model becomes one part of a longer chain. And I think the chains are going to get longer from what I'm seeing happening. They're getting longer and longer as you integrate more and more sections into it to add in more uniqueness and more precision in a particular field. I mean, you might want to add in a medical database. I'm just giving an example that's come to
Absolutely,
mind.
absolutely.
And so, do you? How long do you see that chain getting? I mean, is it going to get? Is it going to get like a 37-step chain of things before? I mean, how do you see that going?
I think it really depends on the industry, the domain, and the use case. So for certain things, of course, as you mentioned, those workflows, certain things, there might be straightforward workflows, which are like 4 or 5 step workflows. But in certain cases, there are, certain workflows which we have built for certain companies as well, where it's like, multi-step, like 15, 20 step workflows, where it scrapes information from somewhere and does some processing, then does this, then does images and video and audio, and it's like entire pipelines getting created there. Second thing is, I think going forward, of course, we have these huge GPT-4 kind of models now, but going forward, we would also see very sort of much smaller industry specific models or company specific models, because every company has so much data on their plate that they're not able to use. That is where, if they just take this data, fine tune a model like Llama 2 by Meta, or any of these open source models, and then that is what really makes it much more compelling than using something like GPT-4. So that would be much more cost efficient. At the same time, something which is specialized on a certain domain or industry would ideally perform better than GPT-4 itself, because it's specialized on that data set.
So I see now what's happening is that there's actually going to be two types of models. We're going to have bigger and bigger models, ChatGPT, GPT-5, and 5 Turbo, and all. It's going to get bigger and bigger, and then we're going to see smaller and smaller models that are highly optimized, that work in a particular area, because they can be embedded. When I mean embedded, I'm not necessarily in a microcontroller kind of embedded, but something that's not a supercomputer running on thousands of NVIDIA GPUs somewhere, something that's much smaller. And recently we had Bard. Google integrated Gmail Maps and Google Documents into Bard, which suddenly meant now I'm able to use the model with my data. And I was absolutely amazed. I had some documents and I just said, hey, read that document and tell me about this thing. And it knew how to tell me, because it took my data and incorporated that, not permanently, of course. It just read it for that prompt and for that context. So give me the result. So now I didn't have to scroll through pages and pages of things to find things. And plugins the same with ChatGPT. You get plugins, you can give it a PDF document, 500 pages, and you say, what did it say about whatever, and then it gives you that piece of information there. So we're seeing these two things are happening. Of course, my kind of like pet thing is we're going to see R2D2 or C3PO one day, and they're not going to be running huge models that are connected to the internet. They're going to have to be independent. Now we're a few years away from that, obviously.
Absolutely. I wouldn't say a few years, even in a few months we would see sort of these private small models which can be deployed on the the iPhone chips or on the Android sort of chips there. So I think in the next couple of months or max 1 year, we'll see that happening going forward. And also I think Google just came out with Assistant with Bard, which is basically like, now your Google Assistant also has connection with Bard. So all the information that is, again, linked to your other Google apps automatically integrates there. And you use that same sort of omni-channel experience across your phone and your web and Gmail and G Suite and, the entire kind of ecosystem, essentially.
So because of this shift now to running things at a consumer level, because obviously ChatGPT, I'm not going to say to my Uncle Fred, have you used ChatGPT? But if he had an Alexa at home or a Google Assistant or a smart TV, there's a channel there for him to get access to it. So we're going to start to see specific hardware, aren't we? I know that the new Pixel 8 has got a better neural processing unit so that it can handle these things. But I think we're going to see a shift quite quickly where if it doesn't have some kind of dedicated hardware for running generative AI, then it's gonna lose out. It's got to be in all the hardware, probably starting next year, maybe the year after that, so that everything it can do more locally than it does up in the cloud. Would you agree with that?
I would say for sure. I think probably even existing GPUs that are embedded in the smartphones or the devices might be able to be used. But also possible that of course new chips will come out where it kind of runs out of the box. So yeah, I think definitely it will become a part of everyone's daily lives in the coming months and years for sure. Yeah.
So, talking of the future, coming months and years, what's your personal vision? Don't give away any trade secrets, obviously, because you've obviously got things you're working on, and that's fine. I understand that. But where do you? This is such a new field. I mean, we're what, as you said, 3 years into this. I mean, 3 years into the internet, if you remember back, everything changed because suddenly people
Absolutely.
started bringing out new browsers. It started getting incorporated in operating systems. It became part of, everyday life. And so when I say the internet, of course, I know it started back in the 60s and 70s. I'm talking about, in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So here we are 3 years into this now, and things are changing. Every time I wake up in the morning, I look at my phone, I'm like, oh, another new model, another new transformer, another new, it's just so much
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So, where are we going? Where are things heading?
I think one thing that we'll see, and we are already, if you saw last week's ChatGPT launch, where it can now, see, hear, and sort of like, kind of also generate images and stuff. So that kind of multimodal AI is what I think in the next couple of months is going to be the next big thing, where you don't need these specialized models, one for text and one for images and one for something else. It's all integrated into that same thing. So that I think in the coming months would be the next big thing. Even Bard is working on something similar. Other models will also start coming out. For open source models and stuff, it would take time to have that multimodality. It's just getting started. So I think that is one big thing. Second is I think private models is another thing where, as we were just discussing, private models at a consumer level, of course, but also at an organization level or at a sort of domain level where these models, because see, no company wants to send their data to OpenAI or anyone like that for processing, and there are data leaks happening, every now and then. So that is where these models, which can be deployed in their own cloud or on premise, that is going to be the new thing where, probably not everyone is going to use ChatGPT. All of these Fortune 100, 500 companies will stick to their own sort of private model deployments and stuff. I think these couple of things. And the third thing I'm quite excited about is video generation as well. That is something, of course, there's been a lot of development, but still not to that level that you would use it for something in production or an actual kind of a thing. So I think that is something I'm hoping that something like how last year Stable Diffusion and all these models came out and really kind of commoditized AI image generation, something similar will happen on the video generation side as well, where we'll see actual sort of Hollywood style or, like very realistic videos being made by AI. I think, yeah. So these couple of things I would say for now.
So just going back to the enterprise section for a moment, my background similar to yours, I was a software engineer for many years, and I just remember that as a software engineer, you've got 2 or 3 main resources. One is your email. That's what it was, back then.
Right.
Maybe today it might be Slack or something, but there's a
Slack,
bunch
yeah.
of messages. Okay, you've got your code repository, including the change logs and things like that, and then you've got documentation. And every engineer spends hours searching through all 3 of those to find a thing,
Right.
whatever that thing was. When did that happen? Who did that change? And now, of course, if that's all built into a private, that's the key. I don't want to send all my source code and all my emails up to
Right.
the cloud, but if I can have a private advanced search engine where I can just say who made the change that fixed this bug, and then it goes, oh, let me go and find out for you. That's just revolutionary, isn't it? That just changes our office workflow, and I'm sure that must be the same for legal documents, people working on presentations, people working in HR, anything where you've got this huge set of data and being able to just go through that quickly and get a human response, a natural language response, maybe better say, to your question is absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely. So there's a thing called Retrieval Augmented Generation, RAG. That is what we are seeing across. So, for example, the Botsonic product I mentioned as well, there we are also using, RAG there, because the thing is, there is so much data, but the context windows of these AI models are very small. Like the maximum one that we have right now is 100K for Anthropic's Claude model. So basically, all of that information, let's say we were talking about the code, source code, and all of that, it can't fit into that context window. So the model can't directly, make use of that. So that is where the approach behind RAG is that we basically break it down into multiple different sub documents, embed it, and now you can do semantic search on top of that, and then get the semantically, let's say the three most semantically relevant documents, and then use that to generate the response, like a personalized response out of that. So I think that is something that I'm seeing slowly deployed across all the applications. So even the traditional search will change to where, it's more like semantic sort of search. And yeah, it would be kind of interesting to see because, and also, of course, context windows would evolve, but at the same time, this RAG thing will be kind of deployed across all domains, and we'll see these co-pilots getting built, like you just mentioned. So co-pilot for something legal or for software engineering, for design, for all of these different things. Yeah.
So let's just, you mentioned context there. Let's just talk about it. So in your experience, is there a danger of too much context? So prompt engineering, as you said, was this idea of creating a context that really made the model give you the information that you wanted. Now I'm using data as a context. It's not engineered. It's not me creating a very specific set of things. It's a whole bunch of data. If that gets too big, does that create the model to kind of throw a wobbly and doesn't know what answer it should give? Or with a good prompt and the data, can you always manage the flow?
I think so far the tests that we have done, most of the cases, if the model is smart enough. So for example, if you have GPT-4, it is able to kind of extract the relevant information out of that. But the same thing, if you use something like, let's say, GPT 3.5 for that same purpose or some other models, it does tend to get confused with certain things where, let's say, if you have multiple different paragraphs or data points talking about the same thing, then of course it doesn't know, okay, which one should I pick as the correct response there. So as we keep on adding more data, the quality of data again is something that would kind of come into play. Like, that data cleaning part is 90% of the machine learning part, right? So that's the same concept that applies here. So if your data is garbage, you're putting in too much stuff, which might be conflicting with each other, then of course the output that you'll get might also not make sense. So as long as that data is clean or the context that you're giving, okay, let's say you're giving 100K, but is it all clean and proper data? Then of course the answers would also be good and logical there.
So we're back to this pipeline of this chain that you've got to have a point that you can't just throw all the data at it. You've got to refine it so that you then get a good response out the other end. That's really interesting. So again, I mean, these language models are just data problems. I know that's oversimplifying it, but it's a data problem, isn't it? We're looking at so much data which we are able to understand and search and read and understand, but here we're trying to get a model to perform those same tasks. And we had an old saying, rubbish in, rubbish out. So if you just give it a whole load of rubbish, you're going to get a load of rubbish out there. Now, video, you mentioned video. I agree with that. I've been waiting for that, and I'm thinking, how long is it going to be? But of course, the problem with video is consistency, isn't it? So you can generate a model of a cat sitting on a tabletop or something next to a fire with your stable diffusion, but then you want 25 frames just for 1 second or 30 frames that all fit next to each other. That's really tricky for that consistency, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think Midjourney sometime back released something around that where you could take that image and then create variations of that in different sort of positions or all of that. But yeah, still not fully there yet. So once we are able to solve that and all, like, hundreds of frames can be created, like how animation used to work, I think that is when we might be able to sort of crack that piece. Yeah.
And now from a human point of view, obviously all this stuff that you're doing and everyone's using it, so I'm not picking on you in any way whatsoever, but we're getting this point now is that the AI is generating stuff that you don't need Hollywood anymore. That's what we're about to say. You don't need writers anymore. You don't need to blog anymore. You don't need YouTubers like me anymore, because you just type in, create a video about. And so what do you see as, from a society point of view and from a business point of view, how do you see that developing?
I think this is a very common question, first of all. I get asked about this almost every time. So basically, the way we see AI is as like a tool that augments humans rather than replaces them. Same. So, for example, our target audience with Writesonic has been content creators or writers, right? In the last 3 years, I don't think like anyone has sort of lost their jobs or anything. In fact, they have kind of made more progress there. So I'll give an example. So let's say if a freelancer, like a content writer who is a freelancer, does blogs, for their kind of living. Earlier, let's say it used to take them 8 hours to kind of write and publish one blog post for, let's say, and they work with, let's say, 2 to 3 clients in a month. Now that same thing, if you're able to do, AI gives you that first draft, which is about 80% there within, couple of minutes. And then you spend some time fine tuning it and polishing it. And let's say within 1 or 1.5 hours, you're able to get that blog ready. So for you, that means that, first of all, you can create more content, it saves you so much time with the research as well. Secondly, you can now take on more clients. If you were working with, let's say, 3 clients before, you have so much capacity or availability now that you can take on 3 more clients. So for you, you have basically doubled your income. And for the company or your client, they are getting much higher quality kind of output. They're getting much well researched kind of output there, right? So I think that is the case. And same thing is with, I guess, when internet came out as well, right? People expected that, okay, this will replace the brick and mortar stores, and everyone will lose their jobs, and everything, that kind of a thing. But if you see, especially during COVID as well, there were a lot of brick and mortar stores that went, also added an additional revenue stream when they went online and they started e-commerce. So now they have 2 different revenue streams, where of course the brick and mortar store is there, and they also have e-commerce sort of working together and serving a wider kind of set of customers there. So I think it's more like a tool at this point, unless we get to artificial general intelligence. That is a different thing. But so far it's more, very specialized task, and human needs to take the best use of it as per their needs.
I agree with you. I mean, I'm seeing these things as a tool, just like a tractor or a typewriter or a word
Right.
processor. Along the way, as we've done these things, I'm seeing it as a tool more than something that replaces. An example I give, when I made some videos about LLMs and things, a lot of people start saying, "Oh yeah, but it can write code." And the thing is that as an engineer as well, there's a big difference between coding and software engineering.
Right.
So, okay, great,
Exactly.
you wrote 100 lines of Python or C that it can do this little function. Well done, congratulations. And it was quicker than if I had to write it myself. But that's a whole
Right. Right.
different game than if I actually want to design a system that's got 10 million lines of code and interacts from the consumer all the way back through to the back end with everything else in
Absolutely.
between, and stock take, whatever. It's a whole different ball game until we get to AGI. If we ever get to AGI, then that kind of thing is just not going to happen. So it's a tool that we should use to increase our productivity.
Absolutely. And as you said, I think even with software engineering, it's basically, you can ask it to fix certain bugs. You can give it, ask it to produce certain snippets of code. But other than that, if you're building something like of value or some, real thing, then you need to be able to guide it. And for example, in the case of software engineering, the software engineer will guide it that, okay, I'm doing this, give me this code, or help me fix this code, or refactor this code. So that is one use case. Same with the designers. Someone who is not a designer might not be able to get the same quality of art or output from Midjourney or DALI or all of these models as compared to an artist, because they know exactly, in terms of imagination, I want this. But if I were to do it, I would just say, I want a cat wearing a hat. But like an artist would say something like, a cat which has whiskers and has, this, and this. So all those, like, a normal person can't do. So it's basically that expertise or that specialization is still needed.
I remember I've read articles, like ChatGPT designs app or designs a new chip or something like that, and then you read it and you say, yeah, after 150 prompts that the guy typed in, to do it,
Right.
and you like think, well, that's okay. He had to sit there and or she, and go through every single time saying, well, no, fix this, change that, add this. I was like thinking, well,
Right. Right.
okay, you didn't really achieve much, did you? You just kept typing more and more stuff in. So there you go. So obviously exciting times. your business model is expanding, because every time I go to the website, like you just said, now there's the bot Sonic, and every time I go there's a new thing on the left that you're adding.
Right.
That trajectory is still going. You're adding in more and more things. You've got things coming that you think you can use these LLMs for.
Absolutely. I think we are constantly evolving there. And the idea is, like you mentioned, so far we have been doing prompt engineering and all of these things, but going forward, what we are also working on is sort of doing these AI agent kind of things where we automate things. So where instead of giving you a generalized workflow, for example, for YouTube script writing, we basically let you describe what you want. Let's say, I'm a YouTuber who makes tech videos and I want, scripts like this. And it'll automatically create, like we discussed, those 5 or 10 steps pipeline for you automatically. And now it's very tailored to you and very custom to you. And you can sort of go about and, make changes as needed. So a lot of different kind of advancements we are working on. And yeah, I think it will evolve. I think it's kind of like it's very hard to keep up with the current AI kind of market as well, right? What you would have expected would take 3 years. It's happening in like 3 weeks. So yeah, it's kind of a fun place to be in.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree. Now, here's the embarrassing thing. What about failures? Where have you thought that something was going to take off, and you thought this will be really good, and then actually 3 weeks later, because it moves that quickly, 3 weeks later it was just wasn't the thing to do. Have you got any insights?
I think there have been cases. So as you sort of mentioned, we are very quick at launching out new things, and we run these experiments, very quick experiments. So for example, last year we launched our Photosonic, which is our AI image generator. That is something at that point, of course, it was good, but at the same time there was a lot of advancements that sort of happened in that space, right? So we sort of shut it down for a while, and then we brought it back again this year, integrated into ChatSonic. Like, what DALL-E is doing right now, we did it earlier this year, where you just tell it what you want, and then the chat itself would go and call the relevant Stable Diffusion XL or DALL-E, whatever, create the response and come back to you with it. So lots of experiments, I think. Of course, for us as well, we are still a startup, so we can't focus on everything. So we have certain key focus areas. The rest, we also want to provide a holistic experience. So we have image generation and all kinds of other things, audio generation and stuff. But our focus is, of course, on certain major things like articles, bots, all of that. So yeah, it's interesting iterative journey.
The good thing is, as you say, you've got that startup mentality. So something you can try it, you can experiment, you can move on, you can invest where you need to. It would be different if you were a 30-year-old computer company that's been around since the
Yeah.
1960s or 70s. I mean, that would be maybe a different thing. Well, just before we close out, tell all our viewers why they should be using Writesonic and all the other Sonics that are part of the lineup, just so that they can go and check it out. Really,
Absolutely. So I think the idea with Writesonic is you get a unified content creation platform where you have your text content, you have imagery, you have audio, all of that in one place. So you don't have to jump between different platforms. Secondly, as we were just discussing as well, if you want to create on-brand content which is factual and references your own data or Google enabled sort of real-time information, then for any kind of production use case, you should be kind of taking, making sure it's all factual and it's follows your brand guidelines. So I think that is the main use case, on the Writesonic side. And apart from that, on the BotSonic side, it's a relatively new product, but we are seeing a lot of engagement because every industry is interested in chatbots, and we are seeing sort of like a revolutionary shift from those sort of dumb chatbots to these smart, more personalized chatbots. So I think that is where whatever industry anyone is in. And I think one thing we were also trying to do is, for the let's say your channel, we can embed all of those, let's say 100 most recent videos that you created. It'll automatically transcribe that and embed it into the bot. And then any of your kind of viewers or fans can go in and ask any question. Okay, what did Gary say about this? Or if it was the Android Authority channel, they can ask like, what was Gary's review on, this device that came out. So it's very handy, you don't need to search and don't need to kind of look for information when you can get it right, from the chat itself as a personalized response there. Yeah.
Great, brilliant. Well, as I say, I've used it before we've ever met, so I think it's a very good tool, and I do really wish you all the success in the future. And maybe we should chat again. Maybe, well, I was going to say maybe in a year, but maybe in a year is way too long because everything's moved on so quickly. Yeah. But let's catch up again another time in the future, because it'll be interesting to see how things have developed both in the industry as a large and also for your work there. Sam, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much for having me, Gary. It's been lovely chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.